Hey everybody, Clay Archer, CEO, DPC Technology, and I've got a really fun one today. Today we're going to talk about how I use AI to control my UniFi instance. Over the years, our UniFi devices have become incredibly powerful machines, but they're complex, and getting them set up and working properly can be daunting. Obviously, we all love UniFi for the simplicity, and they do work great right out of the box, but a lot of the features need fine-tuning. And today we're going to kind of go through the 3 different levels that I would use AI to do that for me. And I'm going to go over them from the easiest and most basic to the most complex. I'm also going to cover the right way to do this to mitigate any security concerns you may have about using AI. And before we jump into the fun stuff, I will say, as the owner of an MSP and somebody that has been managing firewalls for some time, I think the biggest security risk in most firewall deployments is us, meaning it's old policies, lack of documentation, and people being cavalier with security policies. The great thing about AI is it is really good at mitigating those 3 issues. It is great at going back and auditing old policies. It's great at documentation, and it has always RTFM. So it knows the latest bug fixes, everything about the current firmware and software releases. It also knows about threat vectors and what's going on out in the real world. So it really does have superpowers for the manage and upkeep of a network if you use it correctly. So with that, let's jump in real quick and we'll start with something really easy. So let's jump right in it. And first off, I will say that I am doing all of this in Claude Code. You could use a different AI if you wanted to. I found that right now that Claude Code seems to be the best way to do this. And I am also using Fable 5, which is the latest release. You can do this on older releases. I just happen to be using Fable 5 at the moment. I've also preloaded a couple of prompts here, but I'll talk about this process and we'll kind of go through it together. So I am in my UCG fiber. So basically the first level here is to take a screenshot of anything that you want to optimize or that you have questions about. For my first prompt here, and you could do this on anything, I just went into my radios here and I went to connectivity and I was looking at just some of this random failed connection stuff. I'm like, what is this? So I just took a screenshot of it, and this is this activity up here. And I said, I keep getting this feedback from my UCG fiber. What does it mean? And basically it goes on to tell me that it is my Vizio TV in the kitchen. And I know this because it says it's a Vizio, and it's the only Vizio that I own. And it says it's almost certainly a Vizio TV or soundbar somewhere in the house because the signal is strong. And that's true. It is in the kitchen. And it goes on to give me the remedy to fix that noise, which is great. Super easy. That's something, you would see this in a log and you'd be like, what is that? I don't care. I don't know. It's just noise in the background. But this gives you an actionable workflow to go through and fix that, which, that's pretty cool. So the next one, I just went down a little bit further, and I'm fishing for examples here. And I see here that my Google Home Max is roaming. It's going back and forth roaming. I'm like, oh, that's kind of strange. It's just sitting on my bedstand. So why is it going back and forth like that? So I took a screenshot of it and I gave it the following prompt. My Google Home Max is stationary. Why is it roaming like this? And how can I keep it from doing this? Or should I? Then goes on to tell me that, hey, Google Home Maxes will do this. They're kind of known for that. It also goes on to tell me it's on 2.4 gigahertz, and I could put it on to 5 gigahertz. It actually is pretty far away from the access point and through a couple of walls, and I think that's why it's on the 2.4 gigahertz. So I'm going to leave that on there, but its first remedy here is to lock it to 1 AP. Pretty simple. I can go in there and do that, and then it's just going to make less noise on my network, which is cool. I've also on the past gone through and on my environment, done screenshots of the environment to say, hey, where should I do this and what should I optimize? Because you can see if you go into your environment here and you look at your different frequencies here, you can take a look at that. You can also, if you have a waterfall, if you have like a Pro Max or an XGS, you can go to the waterfall and take a look at that waterfall and say, hey, do a screenshot of that. And then you can use that information to just say a prompt like, hey, how can I optimize the Wi-Fi in my location? Obviously, the more information you have there, the better it's going to be, but it's really good at going through and do that. I have already done that here, so I'm not going to go through that again, but that is probably a pretty typical one that everybody would do right off the bat. Another one that people get really confused about and have a lot of trouble setting up is to go into your policies. So if I just go into my policy table, I could do a screenshot of my policy table and ask it something like, looking at my policy table, is there anything that you would change? And this prompted me a bunch of information about my Cloudflare reverse proxy that I have set up to my TrueNAS box. Another idea for this is, just anytime you have, an issue to resolve or a question or whatever. And you can see here my PDE Pro has an issue and click to resolve. I could ask it about that. UniFi is pretty good about prompting you how to resolve issues, but if you have an issue that you're having really trouble resolving, It's great for that. The super cheat code here, obviously this works great on almost any technical stuff. So I mentioned my TrueNAS box a minute ago. Whenever TrueNAS does something that I don't understand, an app doesn't work anymore, or yeah, I need to do something obscure that I don't know about, it's great to be able to use this technique where you screenshot an area and you just ask ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI you're using what to do to fix the situation. It is really good at walking you through this. I had an issue on Portainer the other day. I'm running Portainer on my TrueNAS. It was a permissions issue that was a couple layers deep that I probably would have never figured out on my own. I've also had it happen a couple times where I've had apps not upgrade on my TrueNAS because of a dependency. It would have taken me days or weeks or months to figure out how to do that on my own. And I was just able to walk right through it. So that is technique number one. I've shown you 3 or 4 examples here. The world is your oyster here. You can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into this. It's only limited by your imagination, and it is really, really good at giving you good information. The other thing about this is you are in total control. It's giving you step 1, 2, 3. You can do them, you can not do them. What this is not doing for you is using its superpowers of logging and assisting you in this. So any of these changes that you're going to do here, while they are going to be in your chat history, they're not going to be logged anywhere. So you need to make sure that you are logging those changes or know that you made those changes. So let's go on to step number 2. And step number 2 is going to involve API keys. So first and foremost, API keys, you do not want to expose API keys to the chat itself. So you could go generate an API key, put it right into chat and say, hey, Claude Code, connect to this and let's rock and roll. And it will connect right to your device or to your site manager. But that's not the way to do that because it's exposing that API key to the chat, and it could also be copied to other places that you don't know about it. So the right way to do this is to use an environmental variable file or a .env file. And the best way to do that, along with everything in Claude Code, is just to prompt it. So I prompted, can you help me create a new API key for my UCG fiber? I do not want to expose the API key here. Can you walk me through that? And now it's going to walk me right through that. So it's basically going to tell me how to log into the router, create the API key. It has already made a env file for me, and it's telling me to just copy and paste that API key into the env file. And then save it and close it, and then it will automatically connect it and it will start doing its work. But the cheat code here is just to ask it how to do it and it will walk you right through it. I will show you really quickly. There are 2 different places to do API keys. Here I am logged directly into my UCG fiber. And if I go into integrations down here, I can just set up a new API key by creating a new API key. And that's what you copy and paste into Claude. Just really quickly for security here, under expires, I would set this to expire in 1 month. And for most of the people here, I would do your setup and then I would delete this API key, meaning you don't need to leave access to this all the time. It depends on what level you want to go to. And you could leave this for longer, but setting it to expire in a month gives you time to play with it, and then it will expire and Claude will prompt you, hey, this is expired. Know that it's going to expire. If you set anything that's automatically going to happen, like a dashboard or those kind of things, those dashboards will break, but you can go back in there and update that again. I would not leave this on never expires because the same thing that I said in the beginning of this video, the biggest threat to your security is that you just set something and forget it and leave it for forever. Setting an expiration and knowing you're going to have an expiration on it is going to train you that these things aren't running in perpetuity, and that there is a vulnerability or something wrong, that it's going to expire and it's not just sitting there for forever. But what you don't want to do is orphan this project and then just let that be running for forever. If you leave that on forever, you just have more security risk than if you had never done it in the first place. So I'll get off my soapbox there, but that is part of your security policy here, is to have that expire in the future. You can say I've got some here that are expiring never. I'm going to come back and kill this after I'm done with this project. So that covers it for the UCG fiber itself. But there's also another API that you can use to give it access to your entire site manager. So under site manager, you'll see I have several devices here, and there's an API that allows me to control these devices. Now, each API has a little bit different access. There's actually more access to the device itself and the API key to the UCG fiber directly. But under Site Manager, I do get a lot of data on all the devices that are in that Site Manager instance. So I can go here under settings, and then there's API keys here, and I can then create a new one here as well. So I can just click create a new API key. Same thing here. I would let that expiration be sometime out in the future. I wouldn't let that go indefinitely. And on this one, you can also choose what you have control over: Site Manager, UniFi applications, which applications. So I can also add interspace here, in which sites. So if there's multiple sites here, you can choose which sites you would have access. I'm not going to create that because I've already got one going there. Same thing here. You would take this API key and you would copy it back into that environmental variables file that we created before. So now what does that let us do? We're now at what I will call level 2. And now I can just ask questions directly. So I just said, looking at my Wi-Fi setup on my UCG fiber, what would you change or set up differently? Now I've not copied and pasted anything. This is going directly over the API to talk to the UCG fiber and come back and report what it thinks there. And while that's running, if you're a small business with at least 10 employees in the Southeast United States and you need help managing your IT like this on a monthly basis, please reach out at dpctechnology.com and we'd love to have that conversation. So it came back and gave me a bunch of information about my setup and what it would do to fix my setup. So as you can see, there's a lot of practical stuff to work on here, and you're probably going to find a bunch of stuff on your network that you need to work on. So next kind of cool thing is to be able to make some dashboards. I'm not the world's biggest dashboard guy, but fortunately Marcus, who does most of our UniFi stuff at DPC Technology, is a big dashboard guy, and he has created some really cool dashboards for himself. So I'm just going to share some screenshots of this. The cool thing about Marcus is he's got history, so it'll show you back for months. But these were all created with Claude. This is his UCG fiber, and he's just got a bunch of cool information here over time for his network. And he's got a bunch of different views that he's created. And here's his Wi-Fi infrastructure, really neat, very organized, really cool way to see that data. And here are his devices. It's really clean, very good looking. And all this is just prompts. You just say, hey, I want to see this, and it will just automatically build these dashboards in just minutes. It's really uncanny how good it is. And here's a multi-site dashboard if you're an MSP and want to see everything on a single pane of glass. This is really cool. And you can just do very different variations of a look. This is the same as that first one with just a green theme. Very easy, very beautiful. These are simple HTML dashboards that you bring up in a browser and they refresh at a set interval. And to set these up, they're just verbal prompts of set up a basic dashboard, and you can just chat with it from there, doing iterations saying, hey, I'd like to see uptime, or I'd like to see Wi-Fi visibility, or I'd like to see more devices, or can I see my policy rules, or whatever you want to see. Really, the world is your oyster once you've opened this up. This is what I'm going to call level 2, where I'm building these kind of artifacts and I'm getting prompts back from Claude, but everything is kind of in read-only mode. I am not asking Claude to make any changes to the device itself, but it's prompting me and I'm doing them myself. The next level, which I'll call level 3, is to have Claude actually write back to your device. And I'll show you some really powerful ways to use this. You can see here, I've got Home U6 Lite here, Home U7 Pro Max, and Home U7 Pro. That Home prefix, I just told it to change from Home to Claude. And you can see as I'm speaking, it's rewriting those and writing over. It's pretty powerful to be able to do this. You can change parameters and have it actually change things for you. And that's not just names of things. It's actually, values for different things. This is super powerful. And obviously it's, with great power comes great responsibility. You really want to be comfortable with this and make sure that you know what you're doing when you're doing this. But Claude is really good at doing these kind of tasks. And I'll give you a practical one as an MSP. I've done a couple videos on how we've switched our firewall stack from Sophos and SonicWall to UniFi. A really powerful way to use this feature is to connect a Sophos firewall to Claude with its API and the new UniFi firewall with Claude with its API, and then have Claude look at the old Sophos firewall and say, audit this old firewall, show me all the policies, and how would those map over to the new UniFi firewall. As you may or may not know, some of the features on a Sophos firewall do not exist on a UniFi firewall, and doing that migration, especially if it's a complex firewall or it's one that's been out in the field for a while, it may be quite complex to make those changes from the old firewall to get it so that when you deploy the new firewall, the end user has the same experience. Claude is really, really good at this process, and it can take a look at that old firewall and your new firewall and actually create those policies and things on that new firewall. You still have to assist it, and obviously having some knowledge on the back end really helps you through this process. I will tell you that Fable 5 is not doing any hallucinations, so you can really trust what it's saying, but sometimes you do have to challenge it a little bit. And like with anything, it may get confused with context sometimes. So I caution everybody to use these things carefully and to have a basic knowledge behind it. But I will also say, as of today, Claude is really, really good at this, and it is only going to get better from here on out. In fact, Mythos was held back because of its ability to understand these things so well and be able to hack them. So proceed with caution, but there is another level here where I see in the not too distant future AI is going to be managing firewalls for us just because it simply can do a better job. It is great at handling these complex situations, logging them, remembering what it's done, rolling things back, being able to change as the environments change as the threat vectors change. And that's something that's very difficult for humans to keep up with. As I said in the beginning of this, I think the biggest threat in most firewalls, and for most software for that matter, is what we'll call old code. It is something that somebody did years ago. 5 years ago, you opened up a port so that somebody could get in and see something, and you never closed it. Claude won't let that happen. It's just that those are very easy things for it to audit and make sure it's not going to do. I will say that these two APIs don't have everything in it, so you may hit some constraints, but Claude will push back to you if you ask for something that the AI API won't let it do, and it'll walk you through it. I also think for a novice or intermediate user, especially the first two methods here, are great ways to learn the system and where things are. Claude will walk you through things and you learn quite a lot. But obviously, this is an evolving and probably controversial topic. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas down below. I'm sure you'll have a lot of them. As always, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.